amps before those do run out. But everybody on the tournament server is going to have full access to all of those corruptions. They're going to be geared perfectly already, and we are going to see that perfect gear go head-to-head as we jump down into the arena for our first matchup for NA. It is Turtle versus Unitas. We are going to see that jungle going into Rogue Mage. Let's get these gates open.
Latin America and Australia, New Zealand come together in the team of Unitas. Oxygen, Aiden, and CMD will be running the Rogue Mage Priest composition on the side of Turtle. Reigning from North America, Dilly, Gex, and Foxy playing jungle. Both of these compositions are intensely fast-paced, especially when going head-to-head. This will be quite a treat to start North America's first tournament off. Dilly immediately charging to center field, looking to find a target with the flare. Will he find it? CMD dodges the flare, but Dilly grabs combat from Oxygen. This will deny the sap from the Rogue Mage Priest. A very important crowd control, as they are likely running that Gladiator's Spite Trinket.
Yeah, we'll have to see who they decide to set that up on. Aiden looks like he's going to be going after Dilly very early on at the Polymorph on Gex. This could immediately be the aspect of the Turtle. Dilly has to be careful. And it looks like he is going to be using the Raid Defensive Trinket from Nilotha, and that will keep Dilly alive. But at least Unitas gets that out of the way early on. CMD under fire, but with a nice temporal shield, should bounce back up nice and healthy. But Dilly's still just taking so much damage. Good control by CMD, interrupting Gex, Dragon's Breathing his next cast, and Dilly is now mind controlled. Oxygen doing a great job with those mind controls so far, and Unitas just seems to have all the pressure.
We saw an interesting use of blind onto the Feral Druid, trying to bait his trinket. They don't find the bait. Nice life grip on the bomb. Dilly pulled out of its line of sight effects, but Dilly has been taking a beating non-stop. Finally, some pressure towards CMD, but recovered almost immediately by Oxygen's pain suppression. Now Oxygen trying to wait for this freezing trap. He pre-barriers the freezing trap. Aiden's going to take a lot less damage if they go after him. It doesn't look like Dilly is really able to get back to CMD, likely using that aspect of the Hawk in the near future. Stunned up, unable to. CMD being penanced in the back line. Gex into a Dragon's Breath. This Polymorph lands. It could be it. Dilly's mind controlled. He's just dying to dots while mind controlled. Will he fall? Lingering Psychic Shell at 10% remaining health with that Vitality Conduit. Picking him up back into the game, but mana's not looking good for Gex. They need to get a cauterized in an ice block onto CMD ASAP if they want to stay in this game. They just got it with this freezing trap. Do they get the Master Spell? Gex is interrupted instantly by Aiden. Good positioning, denying the Master Spell to keep themselves in the game, and suddenly it's flipped on its head. All three team members of Unitas critically low on health, and Turtle keep turtling it out just a little bit longer.
A bit unfortunate there for CMD, having to overlap the Cauterize with the Ice Block, so no longer has that cheat death effect, and that could be horrifying. Dilly once again getting mind controlled. Oxygen, though, into a stun. CMD's in a lot of trouble. He's by himself. Oxygen caught into a full freezing trap, and that has to be the game. There is no way CMD lives. And Turtle, with a very, very aggressive push for the last 30-40 seconds of that game, do manage to take down CMD and put the first point on the board.
Welcome home to NA. It feels good. We got the fast games to kick stuff off. And Zico, I think one of the things that's been really interesting about jungle in general is the fact that, and it's been this way for a while, you typically, if you've been watching World of Warcraft for a very long time, you're like, okay, jungle is only fast. And then now it's been much more of it can be like a little bit slower, it can be a little bit more methodical, it can wait for some of these good goes to pop up. And now when we watch the EU jungle compared to this NA jungle, how different does it actually feel stylistically between the 2 days with two very good teams piloting that composition?
I feel like both of these teams play a little bit more aggro than what we saw yesterday in Enlight versus Diablos Red. I think in Enlight versus Diablos Red, they were playing with the Paladin, of course, as well. So there's a little bit more cooldowns that the jungle kind of have to go through compared to the RM Priest. But still, I liked it. They both played a really aggro game, and I think they did the jungle did a really good job punishing CMD on that mage when he wanted to go for the polys. They did a good rotation with the Gex, Prem, and the Foxy's interrupts, and then when they didn't have anything, they just focused all their damage onto the mage to kind of push him back. And the first time they did that, they were able to get the ice block. Second time they did that, they were able to get the kill. So I think the jungle, they're playing really well right now. And also, it's very fun to see Gex competing because this guy is like one of those kind of ladder heroes that you don't see often in tournaments, but he's super good on that priest.
Yeah, now my other question is, just overall for the day, because we haven't fully kind of dived into discussing this. This is before we get into Ashmains. Obviously, we will be heading there for our second map. I expect to see potentially the same things from these squads. But when we do actually talk about corruptions, there have been two basic routes. You pick either stack all the versatility in the world and become an undying god, or go for full gushing wounds and hurt undying gods potentially, while making yourself a little bit more vulnerable. Do you think in NA we might see people go more towards that gushing route, Venricky, or do you think versatility is still going to be the side of the coin that we go to more than not?
I think it really depends on what class you are and what matchup it is. So, I mean, if you're a class that's not going to be targeted very often, or you're very survivable, so a good example, is an assassination rogue or an unholy death knight, more often than not, you're going to find these classes using gushing wounds, because even without the versatility, they can still survive and hold on for quite some time, and that added bonus really can push through the bonus versatility, like you said. So the compositions that kind of require that bonus damage to actually win the game, I think they're going to have to take those risks and go with gushing, whereas the compositions that can kind of just live, and if their win condition is just living and surviving goes, that's when you're going to see them really try to implement versatility, just live as long as they can, and eventually squeak out a win through consistency.
Sid, I heard something catch your eye.
I was
there.
looking at the gear that they were wearing to figure out what they were all wearing, and all the fire mages in EU were wearing a Battlemaster trinket and then a claw. CMD's actually wearing the lingering psychic shell, even though it's an agility strength trinket, just because the on-use effect is so good. Even though he's a mage, he's actually using that as a defensive option, which makes sense because if his healer gets freezing trapped, he can activate that, absorb some damage, and it's only a 1 minute cooldown, whereas the Battlemaster I think is 1.5, so you get it every second freezing trap rather than every third freezing trap. But he's running full gushing. He's not running any verse. So he's wearing a tank trinket, but he's wearing full gushing. So is Aiden. They were all wearing... Oh, no. The priest's Oxygen was running versatility. And then Gex, I believe, as well, was running versatility. Both priests are running versatility. Dilly was running gushing. Survival Hunter is a weird spec because you actually can't afford to run. You normally can't. I guess Dilly actually was, though. He was running the Conflict and Strife Major. You lose a huge amount of damage to get that, but judging by his ability to almost barely survive, I guess it did make a lot of sense for him to run it and just lose out.
There are a lot of interesting things to talk about, especially when you talk about actually the real estate of pieces compared to the corruption budget and where you want to try to get your damage, where you want to try to get your survivability. But now let's see what all that gear actually has to say as we touch down into the second game. Turtle leads by 1.
Let's see who Unitas decides to open up. It looks like they're going to be going after Dilly once again. Early fear on Gex. Nice setup. Dilly down to around 50% health. The Vitality Conduit from Gex should easily be able to bounce his health back up, though. That was a Dark Archangel push from the team of Unitas. CMD now under fire. Uses the Temporal Shield, trying to survive, trying to hold on to that Cauterize and that Ice Block. Can he? Oxygen has to use something. Grades out the Vitality Conduit. Just such a strong essence. And really just bounce your health back after a big strong go from the other team. And because of that essence, both teams should be fine in the opener.
Alright, both teams recover through the initial exchange. Gex is behind on mana, but a freezing trap on Oxygen could turn this game on its head almost immediately. Oxygen just spamming mind control. Cyfoxy being pulled away. Dilly jumps over to interrupt the mind control and get his Feral back into the fight. He fakes out the premonition. He snipes out the freezing trap. They're pushing towards CMD, but Dilly gets intercepted by Aiden. It's all Cyfoxy. Can Cyfoxy force the Cauterize? He can. This is a ferocious Feral Druid you don't want to mess with. Now bashing the healer, pushing for the block, and he's not going to block. Cyfoxy hard carrying there at the end of the game. Dilly was doing his best to make his way to the target, but he's fortunate to have Cyfoxy and Gex to back him up. This is insane damage coming out from Team Turtle.
Yeah, it really is, and thankfully we have a lot of mages to actually break down what happened there. I don't main a mage. Then Rookie, so what is the idea of trying to hold on to your ice block for the next game? Why would you try to save that cooldown for the next one?
No, I mean, a lot of different factors could be at play, right? Maybe he mismanaged his global, maybe his healer said, you know what, you're going to be fine, don't ice block, and then a little micro CC hit. Lots of things can happen. It isn't always the mage's fault, Rich, but one thing is for certain is I do find it really interesting what Sid said, that he's running full gushing. Because I can't help but feel like in a matchup like this, Both priests are going through mana relatively quick. It seems like maybe gearing a little bit more defensive if you know you're going to be the target could be smart. Like, I feel like CMD could get so much value out of versatility if they're only going after him in this match, and it seems like they're able to put out a ton of damage. So maybe they need a strategy change.
Yeah. Just TLDR, I will say, what I did here, it doesn't matter if you're a mage, it doesn't matter what spec you are, always blame the healer. Yeah, there we go. We got that covered. We just make sure everybody at home fully understands that. But yeah, I think, Zika, there are a lot of interesting things going on, like Sid pointed out, trying to preserve that corruption budget and maybe use that more for damage, and then falling back on things like lingering psychic shells, which is a drop off of N'Zoth if you haven't actually stepped into Nyalotha yet, to try to find that defensive utility. What do you think of some of those decisions, Zico?
Well, I think that as a fire mage, you probably just want to stack max Versa, to be honest.
Okay.
I don't think the gushing is it's not doing enough, because it's so hard for the fire mage to actually land the crowd control here. So I think a lot of the time you're kind of just relying on staying back, trying to survive, and then after you've survived the setup, you can kind of look to push in and land something. I feel like every time CMD tries to do that, he kind of just dies. So I think I gotta agree with Van here. And I think I would rather see 2 offensive trinkets and full Versa than full offensive gear and tank trinkets, to be honest.
I was just reading chat now. Obviously, we have like a little bit of delay between chat and us. And then chat, I just looked at chat. The first thing I see is, "It's Soda's fault?" ? But yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, I do think that some tweaks could happen. We talked about this a lot yesterday as well, Sid. Before we got into this current meta, a lot of the times when we were talking about tweaks, the only thing that we were talking about was like, can they maybe bring something else? Can they switch up their composition a little bit? Now you have to think about corruption. You have to think about different choices in the gear in a way that we didn't really have to before. I feel like Azerite was kind of the main focus point, right? If you were going to change up some stuff, but now there are just so many factors. Obviously, everybody's going to be skill capped when you're this close to the end of the expansion, so it's very interesting to see all of those little micro changes that you can make. But now the gates are about to open. This is an elimination series, and Turtle can win it here.
Well, what's crazy is everybody is playing Gushing except the Priest. Dilly's not wearing Verse either, and he's getting very low in a lot of these kidney shots, so it's a gamble between both these teams. They're playing to their aggressive play styles and natures, which is awesome to see. Gex gets sapped up. This is a great start for Unitas. They've not been able to get a sap in any of their games. They might just instantly win because of it. 3 stun locks onto Dilly. Lingering Psychic Shell at very low health. They've cut through it. They might get the turtle. They might just kill him in a Dragon's Breath. Vitality Conduit stabilizes him. He drops the freezing trap, now looking to push onto CMD. CMD wraps up to the top side of the balcony, healing himself back up with a well-timed temporal. Beautiful play by CMD. Now he's counter-aggressing Dilly, keeping him on the back foot. Any crowd control into Gex, it could be the end of the game. Aiden's trying to fake out the Prem on the blind. He doesn't want to get premonitioned on that very important crowd control. He's playing right next to Gex, but rooted off his target. CMD is just soloing Dilly. Full blind has been secured. Dilly is locked down in a stun. Is he going to be able to hold on to the turtle here? So low on health. They bomb him at 5%. He jumps out of the smoke bomb with disengage. Gex gets caught in a full polymorph. Aspect of the turtle is falling any second. Dilly, what are you going to do? You got nothing left. He just jumps to the mage, desperately holding on, but it's not enough. And Unitas strike back on match point to keep themselves in the tournament.
Yeah, I love him jumping in at the very end there. Like the turtle's falling off, your healer's completely CC'd. You may as well jump in. It's just like that moment where you're like, oh crap, here we go again. Zika, let's actually talk about how Dilly found himself in that position, though. There was so much pressure on him this time around. What changed in this third game?
Well, they were able to land the CC and pull the trigger on Dilly, and I think the smoke bomb of Aiden was really big for them. They had, that setup in the start where they almost killed Dilly through everything. They forced out, Exil heal. They forced out a lot of defensives, Vitality Conduit, etc. And then towards the end, they were able to land another CC chain and basically repeat what they did. Turtle on its own just wasn't enough there for Dilly, and he ended up going down. And I think a lot of this is because both teams are gearing super aggressively. And that's why, anybody can go down at any point.
I kind of like it.
Except for the priests. Let's be honest, the priests are not probably. I would be surprised if we saw a priest go down in this matchup. But everyone else, it's a fair game.
I like it.
I I like it too, right? I think one of the things that, not to talk too much about how we feel about some of the stuff, but I know the second that we saw some of the corruptions come out and they were doing big damage, it was just like, all right, people are getting hurt and this is fun to watch. It's just like, even with like different things where you see win conditions come out with some of the newer stuff, it is exciting to watch. And also, I think NA's been the region that always does err on the side of Zug, and it's great. Dilly's been playing really well. Let's talk about some of the other players who've been playing well, though. Super T's. Anybody really standing out to you in this matchup so far?
I feel like Unitas are sort of coming together a bit more now. I think they've realized how important it is to get sap at the start of the game. I feel like these other 2 rounds, they weren't able to get crowd control and Gex, and then it's just a game where they're playing around for a long time. The first game, they actually experimented. They tried blinding the Feral Druid. I'm wondering what they were really trying to get with that, because normally that used to be an old school strategy against jungle as rogue mage. You'd blind the Feral on his incarnation, and if he trinketed, you just killed him later. And if he didn't trinket, you got rid of incarnation. So it was a good idea back then. This time around, they just kind of blinded him seemingly randomly, hoping that he would like, I'm trinketing blind, and then kill him or something. And then they didn't have blind. And that's literally the best crowd control in the game in my mind. It's just a guaranteed 8-second crowd control, undispellable. And almost all rogue comps revolve around blind pretty much. So they threw that away in game 1. Game 2, they didn't really get a great start with crowd control. And then in game 3, they got a good start with crowd control. And they had blind for the healer. And they just immediately won the game. So they've sort of allocated their resources better now.
I really want to see, like, because Gex is running Relentless, I just want to see triple Gladiator Spite Unitas, go in, CC Dilly on his pet, triple Spite Gex, and try to erase his account instantly. I think they could do it.
Try to delete him straight off the tournament
I
realm.
want to see Spite.
We're going to have to see if those spites are going to be enough to do it. You heard from Super T's a little while ago as well. He feels like Unitas potentially pulling stuff together, but their backs are against the wall. A very volatile matchup, and just pulling it together will not be enough because Unitas cannot drop another game. If they do, they will no longer be in this tournament. Turtle going to try to close it out here as Unitas desperately tries to make it to a Game 5.
Yeah, well, let's see if they can do it. That last game looked really good for Unitas. Crowd control was definitely on point. The damage on Dilly was immense. Needs to be really, really careful. Gex may be having to use some cooldowns a little bit more preemptively on some of these setups, but we'll see if Unitas can have that same kind of start. Dilly had to use just so much in the opener. The lingering Psychic Shell is exhilaration down to 10% health, and it was just a nightmare for Turtle to catch up, back foot the entire game. So Turtle's going to have to defuse that opener a little bit better if they want to find victory here in game number 4.
CMD also switched to full verse last game, so I would imagine that he's still going to continue to play full verse. He was taking a lot less pressure. I think that was a smart decision. They don't get a sap, though, or a polymorph on Gex at the start. They immediately just go for blind instead. Are they going to spite him? Doesn't look like they're going to spite him. They're going after Dilly. Dilly knocks them away. Cyfoxy chases the mage to burst him down single-handedly. Can Cyfoxy get another solo kill? I don't think so. Temporal Shield should bounce him back into the fight. Gex gets polymorphed out of the sap. CMD blinks in to try and force aspect of the turtle. Dilly trades out with the lingering Psychic Shell, and it looks like that's going to be a big enough absorb for Gex to sit through the crowd control and pick him back up. Not nearly as many cooldowns forced off initially here from Unitas. They're going to need to pick it up.
Yeah, it looks like CMD, changing up his gear just a little bit. I mean, there's a huge pressure difference, and you can tell Dilly still taking a ton of damage from Aiden and CMD. The kidney shot into the mind control, trying to immune some defensive cooldowns. A full polymorph gets secured by CMD. Nicely done by Unitas. Great crowd control, great coordination, but it looks like Dilly will escape pretty unscathed, to be honest. And now it's CMD, who's completely on the back foot. Temporal Shield, a trap over onto Oxygen. Nicely done by Dilly Poo to set that up. But it looks like CMD will be able to survive, and now it is Dilly in a full stun.
That was a sick harpoon. So he harpoons the priest, which roots him in place, then uses his knockback to knock the rogue away that tried to shadow step back to eat the freezing trap. That was nice play by Dilly. This is going to be the type of play that gets his team a win here in the tournament if he can keep it up. His priest is not very good on mana at the moment, Full polymorph on to Gex, sniped out. Dilly stunned up. It's 3 versus 1. Cyfoxy needs to assist. He stuns the mage, bursts CMD down a bit, but with that added versatility and conflict and strife, I never want to see a Drestagath into a stunned target. There's no way it's going to be more value than just using it while they're not stunned. Once again, trying to eat the freezing trap. They knock Aiden and Oxygen away. Aiden needs to eat this freezing trap, but he doesn't find it. CMD's going to hide at the boxes. He needs to line of sight Dilly. He's getting Drestagath. Big damage in from Cyfoxy. Cyfoxy chasing after him. Temporal shield triggers. He recovers. Mana is starting to burn down rapidly on both sides, but there's still an advantage to Unitas. They make a swap over to Aiden. Yeah, I believe he is running the Gushing Wound, so he's not going to be nearly as tanky, but Dilly falls behind. Gex gets interrupted. Oxygen's moving in. He's looking for a Psychic Scream, but he gets intercepted by Dilly. He's snared up by the Tar Trap. They need to keep Oxygen away from Gex. Gex repositions, but now fully blinded. Everybody in crowd control. Insane pressure coming out from Unitas, and they're taking us to a Game 5.
Ooh, that Dragon's Breath to seal the deal from CMD, keeping Dilly locked down so he couldn't use Turtle, he couldn't use Exhilaration. Really nice plays coming in from Unitas, tying up the series.
Wow, yeah, I mean, I definitely did not expect to make it all the way to this Game 5 after the first 2. Zico, let's talk about what's changed in these last 2 games.
I think they've just decided to ignore the fire a little bit more. They're getting a little bit more value out of their blinds, and I mean, that Dragon's Breath was really dirty last game. that was a sick Dragon's Breath, because obviously it stopped Dilly from using that aspect of the turtle, Stunlock Ant, Dragon's Breath, and then you get a little bit of extra damage, and then he dies before he can access that. No Dragon's Breath there, he could survive. So I think they're just kind of heating up a little bit, and I'm excited to see it, because in some of the online tournaments that we had earlier, Unitas actually had really strong showings on this RMP. So I'm at least, even if they go down here, I'm glad that they didn't just get rinsed 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, even if they do go down, they've definitely shown that they're a team that can go toe-to-toe with this team, right? It's always nice when you feel like you're getting into the final game and you're 100% sure that it can go either way, but it's going to be a good game no matter what. Let's actually take a look, though, at some of the key moments that brought us to this Game 5, Zico.
Yeah, so this was just such a nice setup here at the end. They got the crowd control onto the healer, and they got the kidney shot over onto Dilly, and they had the damage to back it up. They got that Dragon's Breath there at the end as well, and I mean, there's not really anything that Dilly can do. And another thing that I've kind of been looking at these games, there's 2 players playing Relentless. I feel like if they play Spite and they blind Dilly and just stunlock the path or fear the path or something, I think they can set up a kill with Spite on him. So I want to see them maybe look to incorporate it, but maybe they haven't practiced that much with it. I'm not sure, but I feel like they can cheese a win that way, kind of just throw their opponent off guard.
Yeah, I think that's Vemricky, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, what I was going to say is I feel like if we see CMD make the adaptation where he changes to versatility, I kind of want to see Dilly do the same thing. It just feels like if you're a target that's running full gushing, like there's only 2 targets, 1 on each team, and you're a target running full gushing and the other target is running full versatility, you're just inherently at a big disadvantage in terms of how much damage you're taking. So I think maybe that adaptation, I mean, in that game, I don't know if he was playing gushing, I assume he was. If he was versatility, he would have had time to get off aspect of the turtle, he would have had time to get off
Dilly was running it.
Dilly was all gushing.
Dilly was running full gushing, and CMD is running full versa.
Yeah, so I mean, if you just look at that game and how close it was for Dilly to actually survive, if he had versatility, he lives. He gets turtle, he gets his exhilaration. The Dragon's Breath isn't enough to actually take him down, and they could continue to push forward. Mana was relatively even, and they could have actually won that game. So I really feel like Turtle needs to make some adaptations on their gearing as well, because it just
to play devil's avocado for a second though here.
Sure.
If he didn't have the gushing, do you think that they would have had those explosive kills in the previous game? I mean, obviously it's very hard to be completely results oriented, right? Because that changes. I believe it's called the butterfly effect. It's a great documentary by Ashton Kutcher, but they really kind of go into what would happen on the alternate timeline if Dilly actually didn't have the gushing on and he went versatility. But do you think that they would have been able to find win conditions like they found in their early games?
Here's the weird thing about versatility is a lot of people, when they think of stacking versatility, they think it's like this purely defensive oriented option. Although, versatility doesn't show up on the scoreboard in some absurd way like Gushing Wounds does, it still provides you with a ton of damage. Like, there's a big difference between having 20% versatility and having 40% versatility in terms of just your raw damage output. So it's not like you're giving up all your offense completely by doing that.
Okay, yeah, very, very good point. Very good point. It's not like you're just saying, okay, I'm not going to do any damage because I went for versatility. You are still getting that flat damage increase as well as the survivability, which is one of the reasons why versatility is so crazy. And you should be farming echoes right now if you're watching at home, but you're going to get to farm these echoes during an incredible Game 5 that starts right now.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Game number 5, fast-paced action. We're going to conclude it on Hook Point, the most aggressive map in the pool. You don't want to go anywhere. This could be over momentarily. Flare has been dropped, but it doesn't find anyone. Aiden is sneaking in. If he can find a sap, that will be critical to the early lead that Rogue Mage can develop. Aiden's moving in. Are they able to grab combat? He's not going for the sap just yet. Potentially, Gex has been able to find combat. No one else is out of stealth. There's no way he's in combat right now. Aiden peculiarly is just not going for a sap. They're just going to immediately get combat onto Gex. Foxy charging in, stunning the mage, preventing some damage, but Dilly's in a kidney shot, taking a penance to the face. Oxygen playing very far back, trying to avoid that freezing trap as long as he can, but already a polymorph has been landed onto Gex. This is devastating for Dilly with crowd control landed this early, a full blind out of it, and Gex is playing relentless. Dilly needs to keep himself alive while his healer cannot save him. He's managed to stay alive throughout the blind. Now freezing trap has been secured. It's time to get aggressive. Aiden intercepts him desperately, stunning him on diminishing return. Not exactly the most amount of value there, but CMD survives nonetheless. This is the first time that Gex has a mana advantage over that of Oxygen.
We'll have to see. Dilly getting low. Gex gets interrupted. Nicely done by CMD. A beautiful snipe, though, by Foxy, denying the polymorph. And now it's CMD. He pushes in really deep. It's going to be the pain suppression from Oxygen to keep CMD alive. But good pressure here by Turtle. Polymorph secured on Gex, but they managed to weather the storm. Dilly stays alive. Aiden actually under fire. And I kind of want to see Foxy and Dilly put some pressure on Aiden a little bit. He's running full gushing wounds. He's a great target. If he doesn't have evasion and vanish, he can definitely be taken down quite quickly. So going after multiple pressure points in the game is something I think Turtle is looking to do this game, and I think it's really intelligent.
I think Oxygen is a little bit shook this game. He's spending way more mana than he has the entire series, but it won't matter if they can just burst down Dilly here and now. He's got the lingering Psychic Shell. That's going to be enough to keep pushing onto the mage CMD. This could be the Cauterize and potentially the Ice Block if they're not careful. Oxygen life grips him to try and eat the freezing trap. They knock him away with the root. Beautiful combination of crowd control. Master Spell on the block. Cauterize going to trigger on match point. Mind control secured by Gex for the game-winning crowd control. Turtle pull it off on game number 5. They are not going to be shaken, and they stay alive in the tournament.
It's always interesting, too, when you do have, in a matchup like this, a team that's able to start off with that 2-0 momentum, and then it looks completely equal in those 3 games, and you go, okay, it's so volatile. If it goes to game 5, it almost feels like it is a complete 50-50 in a lot of ways. Zika, when we actually watched this game, did it feel like it was a complete 50-50 to you? Did you feel like Unitas had some real chances to win, or did Turtle really manage to pull ahead here like they did in the first 2 games? Mm-hmm.